Marcus had always believed that freedom was found in open land. After years of working long hours and saving every penny he could, he finally stood on the soil. He could proudly call his own a wide ranch on the edge of town, where the grass danced with the wind and the horizon seemed endless. It wasn't just property to him. It was the dream he had carried since childhood, a dream of quiet mornings, the sound of horses galloping in open fields, and nights under stars so bright they lit the sky like lanterns. Neighbors often wondered why Marcus smiled every time he walked his land, but to him it was simple. He was finally free. For Marcus, the ranch was more than just a home. It was a statement. He wanted to live life on his terms, away from crowded streets and nosy neighbors who always seemed to care more about appearances than happiness. On his ranch, no one told him what color to paint his house, when to cut his grass, or how to live his life. It was his sanctuary, his escape from rules that never made sense. Yet, just beyond the fences of his land, trouble was waiting. The neighborhood was controlled by a powerful homeowners association, and the moment Marcus chose independence over their authority, he unknowingly put himself in their sights. At first, the HOA members acted friendly, offering forced smiles and shallow greetings. But behind their polite words was a quiet resentment. They saw Marcus as different, someone who didn't bend to their will, and they didn't like it. To them, control was everything. And Marcus represented the one thing they couldn't stand: freedom. One chilly morning, Marcus stepped outside, expecting to see the usual beauty of his ranch, the sun lifting over the hills, the quiet rustle of the grass, and the peaceful sound of his horses grazing. But instead, his eyes froze on something that didn't belong. Overnight, a massive fence had appeared, stretching across the edges of his land like a steel prison wall. At the front stood a towering gate with a heavy lock, and to his shock, Marcus didn't have the key. His heart sank as he realized what had happened. The HOA had struck. They had built the fence under the claim of protecting the neighborhood, but everyone knew the real reason. They wanted control, and they thought cutting off his freedom would break him. As Marcus walked the length of the fence, anger surged through him. Every corner of his land was boxed in. The gate wasn't just a barrier, it was a message. The HOA wanted him to bow, to follow their rules, and to depend on them for even the simplest things, like leaving his own property. Across the street, he noticed a few HOA members, watching from their porches, whispering to one another with smug looks, as if they had finally won. But Marcus wasn't the kind of man who gave up easily. While most people might have stormed into the HOA office demanding answers, he stood still, staring at the locked gate with narrowed eyes. Something in him refused to let them see his frustration. They thought the fence had trapped him. What they didn't know was that they had only awakened a quiet determination inside him. The HOA believed they had clipped his wings, but in reality, they had just given him the reason to fight back harder than ever before. For days, Marcus lived with the fence looming over him like a cage. Every time he walked to the gate, the heavy lock mocked him, reminding him of the HOA grip. Yet, instead of giving in to anger, Marcus observed. He studied the fence, the posts, and especially the gate. If the HOA wanted a battle, he needed to understand every detail of their trap. That's when he noticed something odd. The patch of land where the gate stood didn't look like it belonged to the HOA. Curious, Marcus pulled out old maps, public records, and property lines. The deeper he looked, the more shocking the truth became. The gate, the only entry and exit point for the entire community, wasn't HOA property at all. It was privately owned, and even more incredibly, it was for sale. Marcus's mind raced with possibilities. The HOA had built their fence without realizing the critical mistake they had made. By fencing his ranch, they had tied their own future to a gate they didn't control. If Marcus acted quickly, he could flip the entire situation in his favor. Instead of fighting them in endless meetings or costly lawsuits, he could strike with one quiet, brilliant move. He picked up the phone, called the landowner, and within days, the deal was set in motion. The paperwork was signed, the payment transferred, and the deed was handed over. Marcus now owned the small but powerful piece of land that held the only gate. He didn't brag, he didn't boast, and he didn't let the HOA know. He simply placed the new key in his pocket and smiled to himself. The trap they had built was about to snap shut, but not on him. The morning after Marcus secured the deed, he walked to the gate with a quiet confidence no one had seen before. In his hand was the brand new key, shiny, solid, and heavy with power. The HOA members, curious about his calm demeanor, gathered nearby, whispering as he approached the fence. For weeks they had laughed, certain they had caged him. But as Marcus slipped the key into the lock, the smirk on his face told a different story. With one smooth turn, the gate clicked open. The sound echoed like a victory bell. The HOA members froze, their smiles vanishing as they realized something was very wrong. Marcus stepped through the gate and back again, taking his time, savoring every second. When one of the HOA board members demanded to know how he had gotten a key, Marcus simply said, "I own this land now." He pulled the deed from his jacket, holding it up like a trophy. Gasps rippled through the crowd. In a single move, Marcus had done the impossible. He had taken control of the very gate that they relied on to enter and exit the community. The balance of power flipped instantly. No longer was Marcus the outsider under their control. Now, the entire neighborhood depended on him. Every car, every visitor, every delivery, they all had to pass through his land. The HOA, once so confident in their authority, stood speechless. They had built a fence to trap him, but all they had really done was hand him the keys to their freedom. Marcus didn't shout or gloat. He simply locked the gate again, slipped the key back into his pocket, and walked away with the calmness of a man who knew the war was already won. The news spread faster than wildfire. Within days, every homeowner in the community realized that the very man they had tried to control now controlled them. Marcus no longer had to fight for his freedom. He held it in his hands, and with it, the power to decide who came and went through the only gate. Some HOA members stormed to his ranch demanding explanations, but their voices trembled with desperation instead of authority. Others tried to smile politely, hoping to smooth things over, while a few quietly admitted their mistake. Marcus never raised his voice, never showed anger. He simply listened, nodded, and reminded them of one simple truth: respect goes both ways. For the first time, the HOA felt what Marcus had endured, being trapped, powerless, and at someone else's mercy. But Marcus wasn't interested in revenge. Through cruelty, he didn't slam the gates shut on their lives. He just made it clear that they would never treat him like an outsider again. Every time they approached him for access, they were reminded of the consequences of their arrogance. The man they thought they had caged had become the gatekeeper of their world. As weeks passed, the smug grins that once followed Marcus were gone. In their place were hesitant waves and quiet good mornings. The HOA, once so feared, now walked carefully, humbled by their own mistake. And Marcus, he enjoyed his ranch just as he had always dreamed: open skies, free land, and a peace that no fence could ever take away again. His victory wasn't just about land or gates. It was about proving that no one can cage a man who refuses to surrender his freedom. In the end, the HOA built their own prison and Marcus held the only key. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and share. And make sure to subscribe to the Silent Side USA for more powerful stories.